Welcome to another installment of Cartoon City. Are you ready, Big D?
I am ready, Baller.
This is the show where we do the crying for you and we leave the laughter in your ears. So I don't know if that means that we are laughing in your ears or the other thing.
Or that they're laughing and then they're hearing their own laughter.
Oh, that might be a thing too.
Yeah. I mean, either way that works, right?
I mean, that works for me. Okay, so we have another 3 very well selected shows. Let's see if you can guess the theme this time. The first show is here's a little reminder. By the power of Grayskull.
I have the power.
Sounds like you're falling down the well, Big D. What's going on there?
I don't have a rope.
Okay, second cartoon is a man on a mission. Does he ever succeed in that mission? No, he's a
player.
He's a player. He's a guy who knows karate and a lot of moves, and he's always trying to get with the dames. Never succeeds.
Nope.
And the last cartoon we have for you is about a superhero, a bug superhero.
He's big and he wrecks everything.
Right. Okay. So let's how are you doing, Big D?
I'm doing great. I was very happy with this selection of cartoons. I think we had a really good time.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty splendid time too, huh?
Yeah.
This is this is going to be an interesting one because if you haven't guessed our theme today, we're talking about overly masculine cartoons. It's so masculine that they kind of go to the other side.
I couldn't help but laugh while we're watching any of the cartoons because even though like some of them are trying to intentionally be ridiculous, even when they were trying to be a little bit more serious, it was just too funny. Like no one ever looks like that. And the thing is that in comics and in cartoons quite often you have these really super bulky characters that have these big like chins on their face and are trying to be all manly, and it comes off as a big joke to me because it's so far out there that there's no way that it could be at all realistic.
No, these are cartoons about big, bold, manly men, truck tire changing, beard wearing.
Actually, none of them have a beard.
Oh,
they're all clean shaven. But you know, they've got the big muscles, and they're all like brawny and a tough guy like. And they have the features of a super manly man. Like, it's hard. You know what? We're just gonna have to go into the first one because it's hard not to talk about hypermasculine characters without mentioning.
And the Masters of the Universe.
Can't forget the Masters of the Universe. Why is it called the Masters of the Universe?
I'm assuming that the Masters of the Universe are like all of those other characters that are kind of tagging along. I have no idea because I wasn't a huge watcher of that show. I was not an avid cartoon enthusiast at the time because I was not born yet during its heyday.
There you go. I mean, you're already playing catch-up. He-Man is called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe because that's the brand of the toy line.
Oh, okay.
So apparently it was called Masters of the Universe, and we're not sure if Masters of the Universe in the cartoon is a reflection of He-Man himself.
Okay.
Or He-Man, the villains, Skeletor and Merman and Beastman and...
Well, I would imagine that they're all masters of the universe because they all have some kind of power to just do whatever they want at any given time. So, I don't know. I bought it. I wasn't sure if the Masters of the Universe were either like it was He-Man's buddies or if it was everyone involved in the show. I don't know. Was He-Man an original toy, or was he just the guy that was going to tie all the toys together?
There's a bit of controversy on this particular topic. Okay.
We love controversy on Cartoon City.
Yeah, so allegedly, Mattel was going to produce some Conan action figures based on the recent Conan movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No kidding.
Yeah, and they had like I guess the toys and the molds made, and then either Mattel backed out of it or the movie people backed out of it. So we're left with this toy line that needs to be sold, but not a storyline to go with it. And the legend goes that they borrowed elements of the swords and sorcery, Conan type of adventures to fill in the He-Man backstory. And that's why you have these very oddly proportioned characters that resemble more like the big bulky action figures rather than regularly proportioned people. But the other side of the coin is that like they had nothing to do with Conan the Barbarian at all, and it's just a coincidence. So, it's like the truth is kind of lost to time.
Yeah, that's weird because when we were watching the show, and I'm just gonna point out that before I watch these shows, I don't really research anything. You do all the research, Baller, and I kind of am the guy who's like the big dummy. I'm going in and I'm watching it and going like, oh, this is crazy. Like I've never seen a majority of the older cartoons that we watched together before. And usually you're telling me, the backstories and all this kind of stuff. And on this show, I could not help but feel that it was supposed to be Conan, like a knockoff of Conan. Mm-hmm. Because he is, when he's He-Man, not when he's Prince Adam, but when he is He-Man, he very much looks like Conan. The only real difference is that he's got kind of different clothing, but he's still got like the bare chest. Not a bare chest like an animal, but he's bare-chested. And then he's got the magic sword, which in Conan he's got, what is it, Kroll's sword or Crumb? Yeah. He's got Crumb's sword. Where did I get Kroll from? Crumb.
Kroll, Crumb.
Yeah. So anyway, he's got Crumb's sword, which it's also like a magic sword, and he's almost like a superhero when he's got this sword.
This one grants him fabulous secret powers, though.
Yeah, that's right. So in He-Man, I really did feel like it was trying to be something similar to what Conan was. But in Conan, he's just killing people. He's not killing like monsters and weird things, which we are going to get into why he ended up having to fight
why
those
that
kinds
is
of,
why
of
that
enemies.
is. Yeah.
So He-Man was. I just need to talk about He-Man, the name.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of a more masculine name than He-Man?
Well, I think most people today have turned He-Man into like an everyday usage word. Like he's such a He-Man, or like he thinks he's like a big buff guy. And back then, no such thing existed. So I'm sure that the animating director was probably like, wait a minute, what's this character called again?
It sounds like a caveman created the name for this character. He-Man. I don't know.
It sounds like a redundant name, almost.
It is absolutely a redundant name. It's like they're like, okay, wait, we got to make sure that they understand that this is a guy, okay? It's a guy. So what's the best name we can give it to? No, Bob's not going to work. Bob won't work. What about just Adam? No, that's his regular name. He becomes something else. He becomes something else. Well, he's like a Superman. No. How about he just He-Man? It's like I don't know, dude. I don't know what kind of logic went into that name. It's a conundrum to me.
It is. So, She-Ra, that was also another one of those that, they could have called it She-Woman, but they went with She-Ra.
Yeah.
Makes less sense.
Why wasn't he like He-Bob? Or He-Super? Or Super He? No, he couldn't be Superman. Ultraman. No, couldn't be Ultraman.
Couldn't be Mighty Man.
Maybe there were just too many men characters that were supered, so they couldn't give him one. They had to just like come up with something totally generic that nobody had used before.
I'll buy it. Sure. Okay, so let's set the stage here for just a second. He-Man came out in 1983. It lasted for a couple years, 130 episodes, 2 seasons. And, this was the same time that Michael Jackson's Beat It was out. He also did Billie Jean. And Do You Really Want to Hurt Me was, the Culture Club's song. In the theaters, you had Return of the Jedi, Cujo, Superman 3, Tootsie. If anybody,
Tootsie's great.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a great film. It's a good. It's Dustin Hoffman, and he dresses in drag, and he plays a character in a soap opera.
that's right.
It's great.
And this was also the same year as the final episode of MASH. So
The thing that's really amazing here is that the Atari 5200 was also coming out.
yes,
Is Atari 5200 the one that everybody knows, or is it the 2600?
no, I think it's the 5200.
Is it the? Oh, see, now I'm gonna have to look it up. But if you've never gone back and played Atari, you got to do that. Let's see
Okay.
here, Atari.
Well, while you're doing that for a second,
yeah.
I'm just gonna spout off a few more little factoids. This was a cartoon that was produced by Filmation. It was the same cartoon company that, they made a Flash Gordon cartoon before He-Man, and I've never seen that cartoon, so maybe that we can revisit someday. They also did the other version of the Ghostbusters. You know, remember the real Ghostbusters with Slimer, the cartoon?
I remember the other Ghostbusters.
You remember the other Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Me too. Right? You know, who can't forget Tracy the Gorilla? Just kidding, folks. You know, if you've never heard of it, you're not alone.
Yeah. Just we'll do that one time. We'll have to go and revisit Ghostbusters.
Okay.
And not the real Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters, just so that everyone can get an idea of what that is. But just to clarify here, the Atari 5200 was that garbage one that came out. The 2600 is the old wood-looking one. The 5200 was the piece of crap.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then you also have here that it also was the same time where the final episode of MASH was aired.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal at the time. That was the most watched TV event of its time. That show was huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't know what that's like, it's like I think after that it was like the last episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah, that's a
I believe
good
it was
analogy.
the next. I mean, it was one of the most anticipated television events ever, and everybody was watching it. So it was a pretty amazing moment in history. Just so you know.
There you go. Okay, so what is He-Man the Masters of the Universe about? Just, for anybody who has never heard of this character.
You want me to explain it?
Yeah.
Here's how I understand He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was it's a story about Prince Adam, and he lives in this castle with his parents. His dad's a king, and his mom is evidently an Earthling.
Yes.
She mentions it in one of the episodes, and he is like the Clark Kent. He has to pretend that he doesn't know what he's doing most of the time. He's constantly tripping over things or being an idiot, generally. And his parents have no idea who he really is. And his alter ego is He-Man. And He-Man is a superhero who transforms by using a magic sword that Prince Adam got from a sorceress at the Castle Grayskull. And when he says magic words,
By the power of Grayskull.
he transforms into this character. And he uses his alter ego to fight against Skeletor and all of these other monsters that are all trying to attack Eternia, which I wasn't sure if it was like a planet called Eternia or if it was just a land.
Yeah.
And Skeletor is constantly trying to usurp the throne and become the master of Eternia. And he usually is using some kind of mystical device or magic or some other thing to try to do this. And He-Man constantly is thwarting him. And what I really kind of like about this is that the whole introduction sequence of the show, where usually you just have like a cool montage of shots from different episodes, or sometimes episodes that you never see, and music playing, they actually tell you the backstory.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull,
So I was expecting the first episode to give us a glimpse as to how he got the Sword of Power. Like, I didn't know if they were going to do that or not, and they never tell you, and I don't think they need to. He has it. The sorceress and him are buddies, and they just protect Eternia from evil, and that's all you need to know. So, yeah, that's the story. So is that about right?
Yeah, so Eternia is the planet where they live on. He-Man or Prince Adam, they live inside of the palace with King Randor. Skeletor lives on Snake Mountain.
That's right, Snake Mountain.
Yeah, and then there's Castle Grayskull. So there's that's the thing that Skeletor wants to get into. We don't know why. I'm not sure if it's explained later on, but there's 130 episodes, so I'm sure it's explained somewhere in there. Although they never really, like you said, they don't really explain where these powers come from. You just kind of have to assume that magic is everywhere. But this planet has a very strange there's something odd about its history because they have high technology in the form of their vehicles and
their weaponry, especially.
Their weaponry is advanced, and yet a lot of their lifestyle is very like medieval ages, sort of. They're still using like axes and swords.
Yeah, it feels almost even earlier, like Dark Ages, because it doesn't feel like. It feels like there's just one castle and one. I don't even see any people there. And then when He-Man is dressed up, he's not in any kind of armor or anything like what you'd expect in medieval period. He's dressed up like Dark Ages with like just one cross, like this like metal belt, or what is it? It's like a metal belt with like a cross, in the middle, and like no pants. He's just got like a loincloth.
Right.
So I didn't even get the feel of Middle Ages or medieval period. It felt much earlier than that. And like you said, they've got like these flying scooters that they take around, like, from the Jetsons.
Yeah, they've got
ray guns.
They've got the advanced version of Segways on their planet.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
I'm really confused. Did the mother come there on a spaceship and get married to the king? Was she brought there through a different dimension wormhole? I mean,
I have no idea, dude.
Man, like that was really baffling.
You know what? I would imagine that could happen because if you remember in the Masters of the Universe movie, that happens and they go to Earth.
I'm not gonna count that as canon.
That movie really sucks, by the way.
Please don't ever bring that up. There's Orko. Orko is the court magician. That's right. He's a bumbling sidekick character who is another one of the select few who know He-Man's secret identity, along with Man-at-Arms, who's kind of an older soldier mentor and the father of He-Man's love interest / captain of the guards, Teela. And then there's the bad guys.
Well, there's also Cringer.
Oh, right.
Cringer, his cowardly tiger. He's kind of like a tiger. He's like a space tiger.
He's green.
And then what's interesting is when He-Man transforms, Cringer also transforms into an angry armored tiger.
Yes.
And then he fights evil with He-Man.
Yeah. He loses all that cowardliness too.
So that's what I found was interesting about that is sometimes when He-Man transforms and then he also forcibly transforms Cringer into the tiger. Sometimes the tiger, whatever the new one is, what is he like? What's the name of it?
Battle Cat.
Battle Cat. Okay, so
trademark.
So Battle Cat just won't be around. He'll just like disappear. He won't even be in the fight. He just transforms and then that's it. So I thought that was interesting because like he would just disappear for the rest of it, and then we'd see him at the very, very end to make some kind of joke about being cowardly.
Every episode ends with some kind of joke,
Yeah.
right? Like, ho, Orko, you finally got that magic trick to work. Kaboom.
Yeah. I wanted to point out something that you had told me also was that this was the first cartoon to start having PSAs at the end of them, which is like in G.I. Joe they had it and some other shows, but this was the first one that started doing that. And I actually think that's a really interesting concept to put that kind of PSA at the end of it, because it's like if I was watching the show, like I didn't even know that that was the general, message of the show sometimes. And it was interesting because we did watch a particular episode where there was a stranger. There was like a stranger that just appeared in the courtroom, and she's like, "Oh, you want to go in my king? You want to go in my magic box?" And he's like, "Okay," and he just goes in there. And then she ends up playing a big trick on him. And I'm like, what an idiot. Like, she's a stranger. You don't know what she's going to do. And at the very end of it, they do a PSA about not trusting strangers. And I was like, oh, what a concept. Like,
That is a saying.
I think that's a great idea, actually, for a morning cartoon that also you told me that this was the first cartoon that was specifically created to air on weekdays and not necessarily as a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, so we have that phrase now, Saturday morning cartoons. You know why we had that phrase is because cartoons actually only aired on Saturday mornings. They weren't just an everyday kind of activity. The weekday cartoons began with He-Man. He was the first one to do so. So He-Man is kind of a, he's a, like you said, it's a pioneering show. It's a predecessor to many of the things that would come later. Also, this is because like of a lot of the censorship that went into children's television for animation at the time. This was like a time when you couldn't show violence between two living characters, I think.
Yeah, there was, and this was, we were having this discussion while we were watching the show as well. We were talking about how in earlier cartoons, it's like you weren't allowed to do certain things, and it's weird because like it's almost like things have gone cyclical. Because if you remember, Popeye was an old show. It was really, really old, like old black and white cartoon, and it had Popeye beating up on, I think his name was Bruno or Ludo. Bluto, geez, a combination of the two. Bluto is not a real name. Okay, that's why I can never remember his name.
All right,
I always think it's Bruno. That's got to be from some other one.
Fair enough.
In Popeye, it's basically like Bluto is being an asshole, and he is, taking away Popeye's girlfriend, or he's beating up on Wimpy or whatever's happening, and Popeye kicks his ass.
Yeah.
So that's human on human violence. Mm-hmm. And then you had a whole bunch of years where it's a lot of anthropomorphic characters. Like Mickey Mouse doing things. There's Bugs Bunny cartoons, and there's usually violence of animals against other animals, or humans against other animals, and not a whole lot of humans against human violence.
Right.
And then you get to stuff like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and they were getting really close to having human against human violence again.
Let me be clear. You could have that in animated feature films, but you couldn't do that in animated syndicated television for children. That's the big difference. He-Man was not allowed to punch or kick or hurt anybody with a sword that was a living, breathing human being.
So you think that, and I'm just thinking of this now, but do you think that the reason why Popeye and those other shows were okay, like they were okay to do it, was because they were actually showed in theaters and not necessarily created for television?
Well, it could be that, or maybe these rules were established long after
Like just
Popeye.
long after, okay. So I thought it was real interesting that they would have such rules, because I mean it's a cartoon, and the way that we think of it now, it's like, dude, it's a cartoon. Like, why would it be such a big deal? But when you consider that there's a long time where people were afraid that children would emulate exactly what they saw on television, I mean, this was a big fear that was going on all throughout our childhoods. I mean, even the WWF, WWE kind of stuff, even that, like, people were like, oh, did you hear? Like, there was a kid who broke his brother's neck by doing something they saw on wrestling. It's like, but you're not supposed to do that. I mean, it's not fake. They're real stunts and it's a show, but you're not supposed to do that because you'll get hurt. It's like you're not going to go jump off a cliff when Wile E. Coyote does it. Like, you're not going to do that. So I don't get why it was such a big deal. But for some reason, the censorship board was like, no, we can't have these certain things because kids will emulate that. So in He-Man, what you notice is that humans are never fighting other humans. They're always fighting a monster that may be humanoid, but not necessarily a human.
Also, He-Man mostly uses throws to get rid of his opponents. He just tosses them over the nearest hill, and then they have to walk all the way back to the battle, and by that time it's over.
Did you notice that a lot of times when he's actually supposed to be punching a person, you never see it on the same screen? Mm-hmm. And often he's punching like a boulder or like a rock.
Yeah, the punch will come towards the camera, and then it'll cut to the aftermath, which is like a character flying in the opposite direction.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Let's talk about the animation in this. I'm trying not to be too hard on this cartoon because remembering that it came out in '83, and they were trying to make a show that they could make a lot of episodes of that would be done relatively cheaply, and I have to say that the animation quality is at certain times it's so bad that it's funny. And I couldn't help but laugh at a lot of the shots that they chose. And sometimes it's not even the animation, it's the shots that they chose. Like there's oftentimes He-Man or when he's Prince Adam, he's like looking up at things at a really awkward angle. Like no human being would be able to crane their neck in the way that he does it sometimes. And like sometimes the characters will like be looking left and right so awkwardly because they didn't want to put in a body turn that it just looks weird. And I was laughing so often just at looking at the shots that it was very enjoyable.
My favorite thing is when you would see characters rolling on the ground.
Yeah.
Like He-Man would get hit by something and he'd topple over and do like a roll across the ground like he's trying to put out fire on his body. Yeah. And then he'll take a whack at Skeletor, and Skeletor will like roll on the ground away from him. It kind of looks like stage acting to me. Like
it really does.
Like maybe the animators were watching stuntmen like do these things and then just kind of like drew their actions without realizing like, hey, this is a cartoon, guys.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, there's a several really good animation loops that they have, and they do it several times in one of the episodes where He-Man is picking up a big boulder and then he throws it, and the way that his arms animate and the fact that they stay on him so long really looks like someone would throw the boulder like that. It doesn't look like a cartoon like movement. Like, you know how there's certain cartoons have a signature animation style to the way things move,
the squash and stretch animation, or like the follow through that a cartoon character would have.
Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch an episode of Adventure Time and see how they animate. That is an animation style that's completely unique and works in its own world, and it doesn't look weird though. It looks natural in its own cartoon, but in He-Man, the animation that they use just looks awkward. Like every movement that a character has just doesn't look natural.
Nothing really appeared natural in this cartoon. Yeah. The expressions that the characters had felt jarring.
Yeah.
Like there would be like these weird pauses or these cuts to another character's face, and it'd be like right in the camera face.
Yeah.
Or they'd be making the wrong expression. And it was so weird that it became funny for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where characters just have like a dead stone face stare at the camera, or they just have a really awkward line of dialogue that doesn't really make any sense.
The sorceress always looks high whenever she's on screen.
Really, I mean, I think that's the best way I can explain the animation in this show is it's very awkward. Nothing feels natural at all.
I did like the backgrounds. I thought that they were very well detailed. On the other hand, Eternia seems like a very gloomy place, doesn't
Yes.
it? The sky
Yes.
is always dark purple with menacing clouds overhead. We didn't see a single episode where, oh, it's a nice day to live in this world.
Yeah.
It's
Eternia looked like it was sitting on a graveyard.
it was like a post-apocalyptic environment.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark purples, just very dark colors. The He-Man gets his power from the Castle of Grayskull, which is like, it looks like a giant skull.
It looks like the mouth to hell.
Yeah, so it's like he's even drawing his powers from a very gloomy place. It's not like, Sunshine Land or anything like that. It's like everything is so dreary. And I'm not sure why they made it that way, unless, going back to this original idea, that they wanted to do a Conan thing. And in Conan, everything is these bones and everything is very dreary, the way that that's laid out. So I'm wondering if they kind of kept that going in this cartoon, because nothing really feels upbeat throughout the entire thing. Even the comic relief is usually being very sarcastic. Yeah, I mean, Cringer is just constantly saying how afraid he is. If I lived on that planet, I'd be afraid too. At every turn, you never know if there's going to be a robot knight sent from Skeletor to come destroy you.
There are definitely some annoying aspects about that. The king obviously is a doofus.
He is really stupid.
He should not be in command. The rest of the characters can't figure out that he's He-Man.
Yeah.
Prince Adam, obviously.
He doesn't look any different. He just like is wearing different clothes or lack thereor.
Do you know why they did that? Like they did that to save costs on animation.
Yeah, it had to be.
And then you have Orko. He can be annoying sometimes. And Cringer, not all that useful.
No.
So He-Man's allies are like the people you don't want to bring along on your adventure.
Yep.
So it's really hard to kind of grow fond of some of these characters. We found more entertainment just kind of pointing and laughing at He-Man's pals.
I just wanted to... This might be a little bit off topic, but Orko's character design looks very similar to the Black Mage design in the Final Fantasy series. Which came first?
Well, He-Man did.
So Final Fantasy, Square, shame on you. Because it is an obvious ripoff.
Oh.
It's the same character design with a different color scheme.
I always liked Orko's design.
I think it's great.
It's really cool. His ears poke out of his hat and you never see his face.
Yeah.
Also, do you know why he has an O on his chest? I mean, O stands
Orko?
for O stands for Orko. But originally
Is this a spoiler?
This is not a spoiler.
Or okay, it's just information.
This is just a fun
I
little.
thought we're gonna it might be like a later
No
episode where you find out what it means.
No, originally Orko's name was going to be Gorpo.
Oh.
But
okay.
Now think about this in animation wise. You draw a G on the chest, and then you can't use that to save cost animation by flipping the image.
it. Oh, yep.
So
another decision that was cheap.
yeah,
Got it.
not a bad idea though. Good call. Whoever did that, those were the penny pinching, monetary minded folks. It is hard. It is hard to make 130 episodes really fast in 2 years. I think The Simpsons usually have they make one episode every couple months.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out a little later, but we can do that right now. He-Man had 130 episodes in 2 seasons. Another show that we're going to talk about next had 4 seasons with 67 episodes. That's a pretty interesting thing to me. how shows back in the day needed to have more content, but less quality animation, I guess it is. Mm-hmm. But then later, you had to have they are expected higher quality, but less episodes. I'm not sure why that is, but I think it's really interesting. It would be interesting for us to explore that probably in another podcast. But since you brought it up, I think it's amazing.
Wait, you mean another show? Like, we're not gonna go into like.
I mean, that's what I meant. Like another episode to talk about why some of those things occur, because I mean, even if you look at the amount of time that is given per episode, I know that in TV you'll see older shows will have like Star Trek is a really good example of this, where the older Star Treks had a full, I think it was hour, like a full like 55 minutes, something like that. And then you look at the next series that came out, and it'll be like 50 minutes, and then it'll be 46 minutes, and then it's 44 minutes, and it just keeps going down. I think those things are all really interesting when you talk about the evolution of television and the evolution of just making a season and what a season actually constitutes and how many episodes are expected. And you can see maybe that's why people started getting paid more money as far as the actors and everything else. And just the cost of everything just kind of ballooned over time. And I think that this show, if you were to compare it to action cartoons of today, you could see a very stark difference between not only the quality of animation, but also the amount of content you're getting per season.
Right. Can we talk about the villains of He-Man?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Skeletor, I think, is one of the most iconic cartoon villains that ever was. Mm-hmm. He's like, as memorable as Darth Vader, and then he's got that voice.
If I touch you, it's going to be most unpleasant.
He's got that really nasally, funky voice. It kind of reminds me like a Starscream kind of voice. It's just way up in the nostrils in there. Skeletor looks and has the body of like a man with like claws instead of nails on his hands. And then he's got the skull face, which is like a pale green yellow instead of white. Did you? Yeah. Actually, in France, they never showed a single episode of He-Man where Skeletor made an appearance because Skeletor was too scary for children. What's wrong with you, France?
It's just a skull head.
It's just a skull head.
I don't know, man. Different time, man. Different place. I guess kids were afraid of skeletons over in France at the time.
I don't know. I may just be being ignorant here, but really, like a skull face, that's gonna freak the kids out. Yeah, I don't think so. So Skeletor is pretty badass. He can't fight He-Man one-on-one with strength, so he's got to use magic.
Well, He-Man is the most powerful man in the universe, so there's no way that Skeletor could ever beat him without help.
Right. So he's got a whole bag of cronies. His most trusted lieutenants, Beastman and Evil Lyn. Beastman is kind of like the prototypical. He's like like the Wolfman kind of. He's like a hunchback, furry monster. Maybe he was the precursor to some other furry folk out there. And Evil Lyn, that name it's never been a good name. Evil Lyn is...
Is it supposed to be Evelyn, but it's Evelyn?
Is that really what it is?
I think so.
No.
I think it's the same kind of issue that I have with Goslin in Darkwing Duck. It's just so awful.
So Evil Lyn is also an enchantress. She casts spells. So she doesn't do much physical fighting. And then there's a bunch of others that are odd. There's Lockjaw. There's Triclops. And a bunch of other action figures that all try to take down He-Man.
And they don't succeed.
They don't.
They never succeed. Skeletor, as much as they try to make him look like an asshole, I can't help but respect the guy.
Oh, really?
He's got a clear goal. The odds are stacked against him. He gets beat every single time, but he keeps trying. He just keeps on trying. Now,
He sure tries.
is he? And here's what I'm wondering: is he trying to reclaim anything? Like, is he reclaiming the throne, or is he just wants the power? He just wants to be in charge.
This is apocryphal. What I mean is, like, this is kind of outside the context of the cartoon.
Okay.
But there's material out there that there might have been this backstory of Skeletor being King Randor's brother, Keldor. Keldor.
Got it.
And that he had an accident where his face became the skull head. Mm-hmm. And now he's trying to, claim what was rightfully his in the first place. But King Randor doesn't know that it's his brother.
Oh, okay. I see.
This is actually explored much further in the reboot of He-Man that came later, The Adventures of He-Man in 2001.
Oh, we might have to visit that at some later point. We'll have to do a hyper masculine cartoons take 2, and have to check that one out because I'm very curious to see if they fixed a lot of the issues that I saw in this particular version.
Yeah.
Would you say that Skeletor is one of those classic villains that you have to rate any cartoon villain on his scale? I mean, that's what I do. Even though I didn't really watch the show a lot, I knew who he was, I knew what he was trying to do, and I knew he was a jerk, and he was awesome.
His influence spread far.
Yeah.
He was like the Sauron of cartoons.
Yeah, it's like you're going, okay, this villain might be good, but is he Skeletor good? Uh-huh. That's the question you got to make. Is he Skeletor? That's how I see it. I mean, he's even being used in, later cartoons. Like they're usually making fun of him, like in Robot Chicken, and it's not really a cartoon, it's claymation, but in stuff like that, or there's even commercials or other shows that reference Skeletor, and that was so long ago, but everybody kind of knows who he is. Because he just, for some reason, was able to be this pop culture icon that's just lasted this long.
Oh, he's got a really good design.
Yeah.
He scares children, except in the He-Man Christmas special.
What does he do in that?
He brings Christmas to the children.
Are you kidding me?
No, he's sent there by his master. So
okay. Is this like a punishment?
No.
Is his master the Grinch? And it was like, I know what's even worse. We're going to send Skeletor to go give gifts to the children. That'll scare the shit out of them, and they'll hate Christmas. I mean,
I'm trying to remember Skeletor's boss. His name is something like Lord Cruel or Primus Evil or it's one of those really ridiculous, over-the-top villain names. And Skeletor is like out to destroy Christmas for everybody by, I don't know, getting some artifact and stopping He-Man. Okay, and he gets like amnesia. He gets like temporary amnesia when he's hit by a laser.
Of course, amnesia. One of the best plot devices ever.
And he sees that the children are gonna, because there's children in this episode, and the children are gonna be killed by his boss's spaceship. So he uses his powers to fling his master off of the face of Eternia, not knowing the repercussions that would await him. And then he's lamenting the rest of the episode because he has no idea why he would do something good, and He-Man comes along and tells the amnesiac Skeletor, like, you've just been filled with the power of good, Skeletor. That's all. You felt the spirit of Christmas.
His boss's name is Horde Prime, and evidently, from what I'm seeing here on this thread, people who love He-Man are not very, very fond of that character.
Can't imagine why.
I need to watch that. Like, that's going to be what I'm going to watch for Christmas this year.
If I remember correctly, it was torturous. It was a job to get through that Christmas special.
Probably nothing like the Star Wars holiday special, but probably pretty hard.
Why is that? Why are holiday specials always just...
They suck.
They're awful.
They're those shows that are made real fast to make like a cash grab, and they're trying to appeal to as many people as possible. So it just ends up being a hodgepodge of junk that doesn't really work.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
They're trying to make a bunch of variety, and it just, when you try to appeal to everybody, it usually doesn't work. It's very rare that it actually is enjoyable for everyone. It's usually like, it's a thing that I saw, and that's about it. I wanted to talk about the voice acting in this.
Okay.
Okay, we kind of laughed quite a bit at whenever He-Man came onto this scene, because whenever he talks, he's incredibly dramatic, and he sounds like he's falling down a well.
We've got to get him to Castle Grayskull. Come on.
Yeah, he's got some kind of voice effect that they used on him where it sounds like he's in a hollow room.
Yeah, and he's... I don't know why they do that. It just... Maybe it was to try to make his voice that much different from when he's Prince Adam.
Sure.
But it's like he's just way too awesome for where he's at. He's got to sound like he's on some stage. And everything's got to kind of... I don't know. It's got to be bigger. It just ends up sounding weird.
More lightning bolts, more falling down the well voice.
More falling down the well voice. Yeah.
More giant battle cat.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be bigger, better, bolder, tougher, faster, stronger.
Yeah. And I also found it interesting that John Irwin, who's the voice of He-Man, also played Zagraz, the wizard in the Cosmic Comet episode.
Yes.
Which sounds like the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, he had the same inflection, the same, oh my.
Yeah. I'm looking at his IMDb right now, and I had no idea he was in so much stuff. And I'm seeing that he was also in Back to the Future Part 2 as a radio announcer.
The radio announcer.
I'm not sure which radio announcer it's talking about, but now I'm going to have to go back and watch it just to see if I can identify his voice. It might be...
I don't remember a radio announcer in Back to Future Part 2.
Remember when it's old Biff and young Biff are in the car, and they're listening to the radio, and it's like a football game or it's a baseball game or something, and he's proving that the almanac is right, and young Biff is like, "Did you hear, man? He just said that the game's over. You lost." And then they listen, and it ends up where there's like a crazy thing that happens, and the other team wins, and the almanac's correct. So I wonder if that is the radio announcer.
It's creeping back to me now.
Yeah, that scene. I'm wondering if it's the He-Man voice now, because then I'm going to imagine that it's He-Man doing sportscasting. It'll be great. But the funniest thing to me in the entire show was Zagraz, because everything about him is so weird. He has 3 different colors of hair. He's got black eyebrows, like blue hair, and a blue mustache, and then a white beard. So he's got 3 different hair colors going on. And then his voice sounds like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's very, very good.
And he just says weird shit. And he ends up like he in this episode, he made comets that were alive. And then they circled around each other, and then they exploded, but only one survived, and it became an evil comet because it had no brother.
Yeah.
And he's telling the story, and he's like, he's doing a really weird voice.
Maybe I can't control comets anymore, but I think there is something we can do.
That voice was making me crack up every time he talked because I couldn't believe how crazy they made this old wizard. And his facial expressions often don't match what he is saying, and then his vocal inflections don't match the emotion that he's trying to give. Like, he's sad about things, but it doesn't sound like that. So it's really tough to gauge what he was meaning by that voice.
Oh, can you hear me, comet friend? Fly! Fly away!
No radar on his emotion
Yeah.
whatsoever.
It was really funny.
Wait, I wanted to mention
Okay.
He-Man's or Prince Adam's choice in clothing for a second. So, at the beginning of this episode, this episode of Cartoon City, I mentioned that these are overly masculine cartoons that we're watching that might be going over the edge, right?
Yeah.
And the edge I'm talking about is that it might be going into a homoerotic sort of realm. So masculine that it's like fabulously masculine.
Yeah.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword.
And Prince Adam is like the quintessential character for that. He's wearing a pink vest and purple pants, and he's got like a ruffly thing like around his waist, and it really looks like what you imagine he'd be wearing if he was of the
He looks like he's ready to go down to the gay bar.
Yes, thank you.
I think that's what you
I was trying to
I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that because I was thinking that the whole time. I'm like, wow, he's really looking, I'm not trying to judge, but I wouldn't expect a super burly man to be wearing that. It's like when a guy is, he's on a motorcycle and he's wearing a leather hat and a leather vest, and he's got bare chest showing.
Yeah.
And he's got leather pants on, and you're going, now, okay, is he trying to be like a badass biker right now, or is he just like going to the gay bar? I'm not judging. I'm just wondering, is it one way or the other, or is it he's gone so masculine on the chart of masculine that he's ended up on the other side?
Yeah. It's weird because I think Prince Adam is always going to be ridiculed for these color choices, and it's really just a painter's color decision.
Baller, would you recommend He-Man and the Masters of the Universe to cartoon enthusiasts?
I would. I think that it's appealing in the sense that you can't take it too seriously. If you just let it have that camp humor happen for you, then it's thoroughly enjoyable, and it's fun to just kind of like go into yesteryear and watch it, and share this with your girlfriend, share this with a buddy of yours, and just have a good laugh. Yeah, just open that up, or show it to your kids and be like, this was our afternoon right here, and this is what the toys that we got, and they'll look at you like, what? They'll be like, this is, well, who knows what they'll think. Maybe they'll think it's awesome too.
It's possible. You never know. I think that I agree that people should watch this, because I think that it holds a lot of clues into where cartoons were going, and it's a pretty good example of what was happening with cartoons at the time, with the idea of using cartoons and using children to sell product, and that product was toys. And in this show, they would create these toys, and they needed to sell them, so they make a show, they make an adventure, and they make it as cheaply as possible, and they use really smart hooks to engage the audience, things that are going to happen every time, and you can't wait for them, and once they happen, it's that big release, and then you can watch the good guys beat the shit out of all the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to point out this factoid. Something interesting was that the music was composed by Shuki Levy and Chaim Saban. I don't know if I'm saying those names right, but Saban, if you were a fan of Power Rangers, you should know that name, because it was that big symbol that you saw at the end of every Power Rangers episode. And the same kinds of things that would happen in He-Man also were occurring in Power Rangers. Namely, the transformation sequence, there would be a transformation sequence in every single episode, and it would occur right before the good guys were about to kick ass. And it used a lot of recycled sequences. The transformations were always the same. They'd have the same things happen, and it was so... You felt great just watching it happen because you knew what was about to take place. You knew that the good guys were about to win.
Oh yeah, you get so pumped. You were getting energized. And they use lightning bolts too.
Yes.
And that's what every cartoon or every show did at the time to get you in the lightning
That's
bolts.
right. Successful kid shows need lightning bolts.
And a guitar riff.
Yeah, guitar riffs, great. In Power Rangers, you had even the big power bolt on the original series. There was that big lightning bolt right on the logo. You had lightning that was going on all over the place. And the theme song would play during certain key moments. When the Power Rangers would start kicking ass, then the Power Rangers theme song would play. When the Power Rangers were morphing or transforming or making the Zords and that kind of stuff, it would play the theme song, which was cheap because you didn't have to make another song for that. And it made sure that you heard the theme song over and over and over again, so whenever you heard anything that sounded kind of like that, you'd think of the show, and you'd think of the toys you wanted to get. He-Man does the same thing. You hear the He-Man theme playing during parts where he's kicking ass, and you hear it playing during the transformation sequence, and you hear it in the beginning. So it's a really good setup to what is about to happen many years later when Saban just starts doing his own thing.
Yeah, I don't feel cynical at all that this was a show clearly designed to make toys because it was also entertaining at the same time.
And I want to make this very clear to anyone listening and wants to, go, oh, well, if cartoons are just there to sell toys, then fuck it. Like, I'm not going to watch that. That's a bunch of corporate bullshit. Every single thing you watch is selling something. Either the artist is selling you just their movie, or if it's on TV, they're selling ad space. Just like on the internet, when you go to a site, they are selling something to you. So back in the day, they didn't have the internet. You couldn't kickstart anything. You couldn't, get crowdsource funding. You couldn't do that kind of thing. So if you wanted to make a show, if you wanted to be an animation artist, you wanted to be a cartoonist, you wanted to be a character designer, or you wanted to be a toy designer, you had to find a way to get that to happen. And the best way was going to someone who had money and be like, hey, I've got this idea for toys, and we can do a show, and it'll be great. You'll get all kinds of ads and all this stuff. And that's what they did. And I don't feel bad about it either. I'm okay because we have these kinds of things that we can go back and look at, and we can enjoy them. There's a lot of cartoons that came out that were mostly specifically designed to sell toys and other product, and I'm okay with that because without that other motive, we wouldn't have those things. So, long story short, I also completely endorse watching He-Man because I enjoyed it. Probably not in the same way other people might enjoy it. I don't have really much of a nostalgic factor for it. But what I do have is something that I love to do, which is watch shows that sometimes are so bad that they're funny. And I think that He-Man has some of that. And a lot of the way that things are animated and a lot of the way that the voices are done, the dialogue especially, is often laughable. And if you have like a beer in your hand and you're watching this show, you will have a really good time, especially if you got a couple, guys with you and you're just palling around and wanting to watch something that you've never seen before and just laugh about it. So, absolutely endorse watching this show.